Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the From Adversity to Abundance podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Bateman, and I'm excited today to have a special guest on with us, Marcus Ross. He's the founder and owner, of Ready to Heal Counselling, and he's in Melbourne, Australia. Marcus, how are you doing today?
Very good, thanks, Jamie. How are you?
Doing well. Sun is shining here. I guess. What time is it there?
It's about 4 a.m.
Okay. Hey, you picked this time.
That's it. I am an early riser.
There you go. Okay. I bet we're maybe going to touch on that. So Marcus, we met on Facebook, and you know what you've told me about your story was very moving, and I thought that you'd make a fantastic guest for our show. And we're speaking before we hit record about the intent of the show, which is, you know, to inspire people who are going through a hard time, or all of us will face adversity, and the intent of the show is to talk to everyday people who have faced adversity, right, and to determine, kind of analyze, how that went and how you handled that, and pull out some lessons from there. So for the listeners who are unfamiliar with you, dive into kind of who you are today and what you have going on right now.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the, as you mentioned, I'm a founder and owner of Ready to Heal Counselling. And I started this business only just last year, actually. I started my journey on the counselling pathway back in 2020 to do my training and so forth. And a big part of that is having a passion to help other people when they might be going through tough times themselves.
Got it.
And in my business currently, I work predominantly with men, predominantly around life transitions of any kind, any major life transitions they may be going through, which does include things like separations and divorces. And it's all really about empowering men towards their best lives. I feel like I personally have a connection to that, being on the journey that I've been on, and now I'd like to use the experiences and the pain, I guess, that I felt at that time. Obviously, it was obviously a difficult time of my life, but I'd like to use that, to help others who may be going through a similar situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's really positive. That's a really positive thing.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And in the practice that I currently have, I use a range of techniques, CBT, ACT, and mindfulness therapies. As I said, we can get stuck in that position. Myself, back in early 2020, I was feeling unfulfilled, frustrated, and lost at that time. Didn't really know, where to go. I think a lot of men, find themselves in that similar situation.
Yep.
Especially when, they're in a family environment and, they're going through a separation, and there's a lot of changes involved and adjustments that need to be made.
Sure.
And it's just a difficult time of transition, I guess.
Yep.
And just to be able to find your purpose and to be able to move forwards, I think, is really important in that in that situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's where I am today.
Got it. Yeah, no, it's, I mean, unfortunately, I think a lot of men can probably relate to what you're talking about. Um, and so if you would, let's back up a little bit and kind of set the stage for how you got to early 2020. What was your, and it doesn't need to start from your birth, but you can back up to as far as you want to, just set the stage, set the context for, what did your life look like, 10, 15 years ago, leading up to 2020.
Yeah, well, I might actually go back a little bit further than that,
Sure.
actually, because I feel like there is a couple of sort of defining type of moments in my life that did have an impact and ultimately end up in me being in that position that I spoke about before, where I was just sort of feeling unfulfilled and a little bit stuck, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
with it. Um, yeah, not being clear on that purpose in life.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess first thing to mention, so I grew up on a family farm in the country, and we had sheep and cattle and cropping farm mainly. And I there was just me and my older sister, and it was obviously great. Um, yeah, with the lots of space to run around and explore and everything like that. So it was obviously really great experience growing up in that location.
Hmm.
But yeah, I guess growing up, something that does sort of stick out and come to mind, I guess,
Hmm.
is like I used to go out and like follow my dad around a lot, doing different jobs and different things around the farm, just
Hmm.
sort of helping out. And um, I do remember, like, I did have a really good relationship with my parents
Hmm.
and with my dad, and uh, we had a good bond. And he would. One thing I do remember, he got me involved in junior football from a very young age.
Mm.
Sport called AFL, which I'm not sure how much you know about the sport in yeah, over there, but yeah, it's quite athletic, um, and everything like that. And
I mean, for us in
but
the US, you're talking soccer, right?
no,
Oh no.
it's an oval ball,
Okay.
um, and there's a lot of
Australian, this
jumping.
is Australian football, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Uh,
There's a lot of jumping and marking, and yeah, it's
Okay.
very
Yeah, yeah.
athletic.
I have.
I don't think there's a lot of it shown. There's a lot of it
Mhm.
shown, yeah, over there. But anyway,
So is this like rugby, or is it different than that?
different. Yeah,
Okay. All
yeah.
right. We can have a side conversation later.
That's it. That's right. Yeah, yeah. That's probably
Okay.
another
Yeah, another
podcast.
podcast. Yeah.
But yeah, so he got me involved in that, which I'm very thankful for. And obviously, like, he was involved heavily in the club in sort of volunteer roles and different things like that. And anyway, that was great experience, I think, for me, and good development and everything.
Hmm.
Um, big and big part of my life growing up was, I remember, jumping in the vehicle and my dad taking me to every Saturday morning. My dad taking me to sport and doing that. So yeah, obviously want to reiterate that in general was a great childhood, and did have a close bond with both my parents.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, having said that,
Hmm.
back when I was sort of 6 years old, I can sort of distinctly remember, um, you know, I'd be helping my dad outside on the farm,
Hmm.
and unfortunately, he wasn't the best at handling his emotions.
Hmm.
So, he'd be doing a job and he'd get frustrated with something, and he'd sort of curse to himself and throw the odd tool around.
Hmm.
And I guess at that age, I didn't really know like what to make of that.
Hmm.
Um, so that was just one experience that I think was actually, really important in where I ended up being before I went through my transformation, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
um, and affected things later on for me.
Hmm.
There
So,
was,
I do not want to pry too much, and it's not the intent of the show, but just we're talking about physical abuse. Is that what,
no, no, not physical. It was
just
more just, well,
emotional and
it wasn't actually aimed at,
yeah,
me
just how
specifically.
he could, you were watching how he,
It was just more how he held himself.
got it.
Just got frustrated, quite easily. It was just more about, like emotional control, I guess.
Right. And
Um,
that's your model for how to,
yeah,
at that
that's
time,
right. So
that
that's
was
what,
your model, right?
yeah, that's what I saw.
Got it.
Another thing, like um, my parents were quite, had quite strong conversations at times,
Hmm.
which I was present, and
Hmm.
nothing physical as such. It was
That's
just
good.
that strong verbal conflict,
Sure.
um, which looking back probably did
Yeah.
influence myself, and
Sure.
how I communicated and
Yeah. Understood.
dealt
And
dealt with the people around me.
right. And 6 is, pretty young. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's not like you're 16 or 26.
yeah.
I
That's
I
right.
understand now, adults don't always get along, but yeah, you're very impressionable and uh, vulnerable, at that point. Um, so okay, so then, and I don't mean to gloss over things, but I do want to make sure we cover as much as we can. So and then fast forward a little bit for us, if you would.
Yeah. So went through. I Up until the age of 17, I was on the farm, and obviously doing my education and helping out with bits and pieces.
Hmm.
And then, when I was 17, started a role in automotive industry, actually,
Okay.
like a parts retail type role. And I was predominantly in that career for sort of, over 20 years, until more recently.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, to put it all, it's sort of hard to condense it all down.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was back in, um, like I've been married twice.
Okay.
So the first time that I was married, to my previous relationship, we had a son together.
Hmm.
He's now 10 years old.
Okay.
Um, so, and 2000, and probably another defining moment for me, that I can think of, is back in 2011, which was actually the year, like that my son was born. Um, and unfortunately, in early 2011, we lost my dad in a vehicle accident.
Hmm.
Um, so that was a difficult thing for us all. I was the only male in the family that was sort of left, because there was just, as far as immediate family, like my
Hmm.
mum and my sister and myself were,
Yeah.
were the ones left behind.
Hmm.
Um, and obviously, being the fact that it was a shock, we weren't
Yeah. You weren't
expecting that.
prepared at all. Yeah.
Um, yeah, like that was really difficult. And at the time I was sort of living a distant apart from my dad, so that brought up a lot of different feelings, of regret and different things. About spending more
Yeah,
time with him, I guess, towards the end of his time.
sure.
But we never do know, we never do know how long any
Right,
of us have. So that's
right.
where, that's brought a lot of gratitude to me now to be very, thankful for all of this, like the precious time that we do have,
Yeah.
with our kids and with our family members.
Hmm.
So yeah, I feel like that was a defining moment for me, and I didn't really talk about it or deal with it at the time.
Hmm.
Um, I think from memory, I had a couple of counselling sessions, but it didn't really
Didn't really
even,
dive into it.
touch the surface of what was there, like the feelings
Sure.
that I felt, and actually addressing the grief involved.
Hmm.
And so I just sort of ignored it and swept it under the carpet, thinking that, that was the right thing to do. And
Hmm.
I just needed to keep on going because, I'm a man, and we don't
Yes.
talk about this, stuff.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, so that was,
Well, especially if about how old were you then, if you don't mind me asking, in 2011?
um, yeah, so I'm 40 now. So yeah, it would
Okay.
have been like, yeah, 20, like 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't, I'm just trying to get some context, more context,
Yeah.
but, so yeah, I mean, and again, if you're, I think a lot of men can relate to that. It's just, you can end up, and I think we're going to get into this, but especially once you have a family and, a job, and it's very easy to get isolated, and then culturally we're not programmed, or we're just not open in general to always sharing emotional things, and as you very well know. um so it makes total sense, from my standpoint. I mean, I think a lot of men can relate to that, but a lot of people can relate to that. um and then, so at that point you were still married with in your first marriage, right?
Yeah. So actually, what how it went. So unfortunately, we lost Dad in sort of earlier in 2011, March in 2011. Um, then my son was born in October 2011. So it was a little bit sad that that my dad didn't get to meet my son. They
Yeah.
just they just missed each other, but they hopefully passed on some values and things,
Hmm.
from my dad to my son.
Hmm.
So yeah, 2011 was pretty big, pretty big
Pretty big
time
year.
actually.
Yeah.
And then I believe my son was only around one, unfortunately, when we separated, when I separated from
Gotcha.
his mother. Um, yeah, so that was like within that, I guess that like within that sort of 12-18 month period, there was a lot of stuff happen.
Yeah.
Like obviously losing dad, my son being born, and then, not that long after, the family separation. So,
Right.
um,
That's
so yeah, a lot of stuff
three
happening. There's
major
a lot of
events.
stress,
Yeah.
within that period.
Sure.
So that was definitely, looking back, that was obviously a difficult time, and
Hmm.
adjusting to all the changes, and moving forward. Um, yeah. So, and then I guess career wise, I was still, as I said before, I was in the retail management really until sort of 2020, when I started
Hmm.
studying counselling. Um, and yeah, I think, and I met my second wife in around 2016. I had quite a period of time where I was just more so concentrating on building a good relationship with my son, and
Hmm.
my career and everything else. So I was sort of more focused on those things,
Yeah.
um, rather than necessarily, looking for love or looking for a partner or anything like that.
Right.
Then in 2016, met my second wife, and then later, um, we had a daughter together, and she's now 3 years old.
Mm.
Um, and then I think the thing is, that I feel like from my first marriage, I didn't really take anything from it. As far as learnings, I think from my first marriage, as maybe I'm not the only, hopefully I'm not the only person that's done this, but I think from my first marriage, I just sort of wrote that off as the other person,
It was her
the other
fault.
person's that's their it's their fault. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And I didn't really take ownership for the things that I could have done better.
Right.
And I think so that was obviously an issue because I didn't take those learnings. And I feel like um I feel like in both of my um both of my marriages, I could have been much better, much better person, much better um, dad, family,
Hmm.
person in the family,
Yeah.
role model. I unfortunately, I had some negative patterns around, controlling my emotions, in the fact that I think because some of those previous experiences that I had seen, I was not the best at controlling my emotions, and I got sort of frustrated quite easily. Um, and I think in the end that sort of culminated in, uh, you know, just being a bit of being a bit of an angry person, really. Probably not being very approachable to others, including my family. Um, and that's definitely not where I wanted to be.
Hmm.
Like, obviously, um, wanted to be approachable and know that, my
Hmm.
kids were comfortable in coming to talk to me about different things, and, that my partner felt like they could talk to me about different things.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
that was not a good outcome. And I think what happened once, like early 2020,
Hmm.
like when I experienced my second operation,
Hmm.
that was um, a defining moment, a wake up call. Um,
Hmm.
that was sort of basically just there was a lot of shock for me,
Mm.
because I wasn't really fully aware of the situation, that it was as bad as it was. Um, and so because of that, it was it was a big shock to the system.
Hmm.
Um, but I think more than anything, it was just a big wake up call for me, where I was just at that point, I was sort of forced to reassess everything in my life,
Hmm.
where I actually was in my life, and maybe who I wanted to be, and like what sort of values I wanted to show,
Yeah.
um, for me as a person. And yeah, that was really just a bit of a process, really, of finding myself. So I think over
Yeah.
the next sort of 2 to 3 months, I just done a lot of soul searching.
Hmm.
I as I mentioned before, I was unfulfilled. I was not happy, and I was just frustrated with where my life was at. And I think it just took that. It's unfortunately it took that event
Mhm.
of the separation to actually wake up and start to actually reassess some of these things about
Yeah.
that I wasn't in a good place.
Right.
And that was sort of the start of it, I guess. And then reassessing what I actually wanted, and then um, I had a background in retail management, like for over 20 years.
Mhm.
Um, Spoken about branching out and doing something different, but I've never actually pulled the trigger and taken any action on it.
Yeah.
I'd looked into a few different things at different stages, but just procrastinated and
Right.
don't,
So
yeah,
yeah,
hadn't
I
taken the
definitely,
action.
sorry to cut you off. I definitely want to get into that mindset because you definitely are, I don't want this to be all all
Yeah,
negative. It's I can tell you have a lot of passion for what you're doing now. And so I definitely want to get to that.
yeah,
So just to be clear, so you are divorced now, is that right?
yes, yeah,
Okay. I just wanted to, just because you said second separation, I just want to be clear. So, and I mean, yeah, one of the things that went through my mind was I was just listening to another podcast where the guy was talking about reflexive thinking versus reflective thinking, and how just in general in the US, or in the West, I'd say in general in the world today, we tend to just have reflexive thinking. We don't even really think. We just consume and just scroll on our phones and go to work, and that's normal. I mean, that's not that everyone should be a monk or something, but you do have to live the day to day and have reflexive thinking, but we don't ever take the time to have this reflective thinking that you took several months to do. And unfortunately, some real pain is what led to that, um, and was a big part of that, I imagine, right? But it's for me, I'm hoping that the listener can draw out that it's really important to take that time, create that space, however that comes about, whatever that situation looks like for each person, but whether that's daily, weekly, whatever, but take that space to kind of evaluate who you are and who you want to be. And obviously that's what you focus on for other people now. And so then talk to us about that, the professional transition that you made, and how, because a lot of our listeners are entrepreneurs or want to be entrepreneurs, or they have a side hustle, or they're investors, you know who run a small business in some way, shape, or form. So you know of course not everyone's is going through the exact same situation as you, but what was it, mentally, what was your mindset at that time where you h- how did you know it was the right time to make that professional transition and make the leap to be an entrepreneur?
yeah. I think at that time there was a couple of questions that I asked myself, which I think I touched on before. Who do I want to who do I want to be? Like, as
Hmm.
far as what do I want to be? What do I want to be known for as a person? Like, values and everything like that. What's important?
Hmm.
And another thing was like, where did I want to be in 5 years' time?
Hmm.
And that was sort of the main two questions that I asked myself to get
Hmm.
clear on what my purpose actually was and
Hmm.
where I wanted to be, because I didn't have that clarity.
So
Um,
let's so what were the answers? We'll just dive
but
right
what I
in.
found is I knew that I wanted to do something to help other people,
Hmm.
and I knew that I wanted to do something where I could use my experiences and the pain that I felt to hopefully help other men who might be going on a similar journey to me, or
Hmm.
might, like say me 2 years ago, or
Right.
just over 2 years ago. Um, so that was my main purpose, and then it was just a matter of sort of locking in what particular area that I
Hmm.
wanted to work in, and counselling is something that just felt right to me,
Hmm.
because it was an opportunity for me to give back, I guess you could say,
Hmm.
and you know, hopefully use my wisdom and my
Hmm.
experience
Yeah.
over my life to hopefully help and guide other men.
So,
Uh,
question. So you, I mean, generally speaking, at least in the US, divorce is pretty expensive. And I don't mean to laugh about it, but it's just, it's a fact, right? And so how were you able to kind of get in the right mindset about your financial situation? Because you already had a lot of transition going on, so I could see a lot of people in the same position or similar position wanting as much stability as possible and not wanting to change other variables in their life, such as, I mean, starting a new venture. That's a lot in and of itself. So how did you navigate those waters mentally?
yeah, well, because it was something that I was passionate about. I don't think I really thought about the financial side of it too much.
Gotcha.
I just knew that I had to make it happen somehow.
Hmm.
But I started the I started the business on a part-time basis
Got it.
around my other
Hmm.
full-time
Yeah.
retail management job. So that I guess gave me a good basis, where I
Hmm.
could, um, I still had some the funds and the income, to be
Hmm.
able to start
Yeah. That's, I
on
mean,
yeah,
that's
on that basis.
got it. I personally, went part-time at my job in 2015 and have been doing part-time real estate and mortgage note investing since before that. And then eventually just quit my job this year. But the reason I say that is that was 7 years of part-time and part-time, right? And um just I think people get so wrapped up in, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, and and then go and quit their job and realize it's a lot of work and it's not always what it's cracked up to be. But it sounds like your mindset was not really about, it was just bigger than that. It was, you needed to serve. Your purpose now was to serve others. It sounds like, so you weren't, so the rest was going to figure itself out, is kind of what I'm
Yeah,
hearing.
and I think it was going back to my why as well. A big part of my why was, like, for my kids,
Hmm.
because a added bonus, I guess you could say, like, from doing this type of work, and obviously being in my own business, although as you would know, there's a lot of work involved in getting that up off the
Hmm.
ground.
Yeah.
um, was that, I can have that flexibility around my schedule.
Yep.
So because I always found myself coming back to that reason, that which was the driving force, which was that
Hmm.
I want to spend quality time with my kids.
Right. That's
So
a
that's what that's
pretty
been
important
about.
reason.
But just to clarify too,
Hmm.
yeah, it does take time to build a business, of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
and it's been growing steadily.
Hmm.
And but currently, I still do some other work, to
Gotcha.
complement that
Sure.
also. Um, but yeah, like it's been really good journey, and I'm happy with where things are heading. Like things are heading in a good direction, to
Hmm.
the point where hopefully I can get to the point that you got to, where I'll be,
Hmm.
stepping full 100% full time.
Yeah.
Hope by the end of this year is the
Nice.
goal.
Nice.
But yeah, generally in business, quite often to build up the clientele, everything like that, does
Yeah.
take a bit of a period
And
of time.
it's, yeah, I think 3 years is kind of what I hear, and it of course varies wildly based on what industry you're in and what your approach is and everything. But um, so you're still within that 3 years. So um, yeah, people, it's just it takes a lot of work, and I do have more control of my schedule now. I can do things uh, in the middle of the day, but that doesn't mean I'm not working at odd hours. I mean, you're doing a podcast at 4 a.m. So there's you obviously still are putting in some work for sure. Um, but so just looking back at, I guess, anything we talked about already, and I still have other questions to run through, but what would you say are, some of the biggest takeaways? It could be how you were able to look at your second marriage, and you sounds like you were able to tell me if I'm putting
Learn
words in your
def
mouth, but you were able to take ownership of your role in that more so than the first one. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think definitely learned, was able to learn and grow a lot from that experience, and understanding that, just getting a better awareness of how I was, interacting with the people around me. Because back at my low point, um, like all of my relationships were not good, because I wasn't communicating well with others, and there was a lot of stuff going on at that time. Actually, was in the situation too, like financially was not good. There was a range of things, and it all came back to my own behaviour, and some of the poor decisions that I had made in the past. So it was just getting that realization, um, and that self-awareness
Hmm.
of, some of those poor decisions and behaviours had actually led to
Hmm.
me being where I was, and that if I can start making some better
Yeah.
decisions, then things can be better.
Right.
And I think at that point, at my lowest point, I just knew that something had to change,
Hmm.
because if I kept down the path I was going, I was just, nothing was going to get better.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, in as much as that sounds, I know it was very painful to go through. There is hope in that as well. So in other words, if you hadn't come to that realization, then there's no hope in changing things, like you just said. So to me, that is liberating in a sense as well, because then you now have more control of your future. And so that's pretty empowering. And that's not to say that the other people in your life didn't play a role in the problems. And again, I'm projecting here probably, but I think once we take ownership of our situation, whether it's in a marriage or our financial situation, whatever it is, that's actually liberating. It may sound like, oh, that's pain. It is painful, but it may sound like that's a lot of work, and it's all negative that I have to accept that responsibility. But it's actually freeing, because, oh no, now I have a lot more control of how my life is going to be um, in the future. So, anything to add there?
Yeah, well, that's right. It was a stepping point. was a stepping point for me, and it was just yeah, it was something that just needed to happen really
Hmm.
for things to change. So
Got it.
yeah, that was pretty much what it had to be. It had to for a
Hmm.
different future, something, you know, some different choices had to be made.
Gotcha. Um, I'm going to fire off some questions and we'll try to get through them and then we'll wrap it up. Um, what do people misunderstand about you?
That's a very good one. I think in the past, a lot of things have been misunderstood because I've haven't been a great communicator in the past. So that's something that's been a big part of my personal development journey. Um, so I'm not sure if that answers your question,
Yeah,
but
that's good. That's
I
good.
think most of the most of the experiences and were based around yeah miscommunication or not enough communication on my
Got it.
part.
That's good. So you probably touched on it already, but if you could go back and give yourself some advice, your 18-year-old self, some advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it would just be having a better having a better mindset when challenges come up,
Hmm.
and also having that awareness of myself and uh, my communication and my actions that I take, and
Hmm.
the um, the impact of those actions
Hmm.
on other people around me.
Got it. That's good.
Yeah, it's just a greater awareness, really.
So, and piggybacking on that, now for men or women, yeah, anyone who's listening to this, um, who finds themselves in a similar situation, can you think of anything that maybe they don't aren't going to be going through a massive transformation, you know, but does anything to come to mind? What are some practical things that someone can do to try to get to that awareness or better communication or, um, I guess rephrasing it, looking back over the last 2 years of your own life, what are some practical things that you've done that have really helped get you where you are today?
Yeah, I think daily routine is really important.
Hmm.
So there was a lot of probably poor habits that I got into, and once I was able to shift that
Hmm.
and get to the point where I was able to find that balance
Hmm.
of setting myself up for the day, which like for everybody it's different what works for them, but like
Hmm.
myself now, there's exercise involved in every day.
Hmm.
Um, there's meditation involved like every morning, and just getting really clear on my
Hmm.
intentions for the day, and what type of energy I want to put out to
Hmm.
others.
Yeah.
I think for me, yeah, that's been a big part
Hmm.
of being able to sort of transform and improve myself. Um, and even things like a daily um, high performance planner, actually. That I'm not sure if you've heard of Brendan Richard,
Yeah, I
but he
have.
has a
Yeah.
high performance planner, and
Hmm.
you ask yourself these certain questions, these questions in the morning, every morning when you get up.
Okay.
It's a lot about how can I serve, how can I serve others around me? How
Hmm.
can I be my best? How can I be my best self? And then at the end of the day, you also ask yourself a series of questions, which is
Gotcha.
basically evaluating
Hmm.
yourself and where you can
Hmm.
improve and get better.
Yeah.
So just Just asking myself those kind of questions as well has been really powerful
Yeah.
in in being able to just realize where you are and where you'd like to make improvements.
Hmm.
Because
Yeah,
if
no,
we're not, yeah,
that's really good. And I think, and I have read the one book that it's probably his most popular book. Um, but it's easy to say that, and I don't mean that like, oh, it's I just mean it's easy to say, oh yeah, I should be more intentional. But I think most people need that, some kind of structure, like you're talking about, morning and night, to actually implement, that intentionality is what you're talking about. You're uh, taking control of your day each day, which means you're taking control of your life. Doesn't mean you can control everything, of course, but you're being more intentional about your mindset and the energy you're putting out. but but you're disciplined about it. I think it sounds like
yeah,
you can't just say, yeah, I'm going to be more intentional. It just doesn't work.
yeah.
So
Because what tends to happen is people are more reactive.
right,
So
exactly.
quite often, yeah, like people will get up in the morning and they'll check their phone or they'll check their emails and things like
Right.
that. And it's all about,
Reacting.
things that are coming in, like that you're receiving.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of people, if they just sort of roll out of bed and sort of, don't really have a lot of time and then they're straight out the door to work,
Yeah.
they're not setting
Right.
specific intentions every day.
Right.
They're sort of stuck in that daily routine, I guess, of just
Hmm.
doing what they need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I was on a mastermind call. I joined a mastermind group, and finally, and yesterday, and the guy was talking about 25-year plan, and then he and his business partner are actually working on a 100-year plan, which his business partner is, I think, 68 or something. So it obviously has more to do with their legacy and their family and things, and um, people beyond themselves. But I was just like, I mean, I don't have anything like that, if I'm honest. So, um, and just the element of taking the time and the space to plan and be intentional, is important. So as we start to wrap up here, I'll fire off some more questions. If you were given $10 million tomorrow, what would you do with it?
Oh, that's a very good question. $10 million. I think that I'd probably upgrade my car. I would pay off pay off my property. Um, and I think the rest of it would just be around like setting things up so that my family and leaving that legacy, or my family and like my kids and things like that, um, so that they can also have a bit of a helping
Mhm.
hand, I guess. Yes, and so
That's good.
I'd probably
Hmm.
invest a fair percentage of it
Yeah.
after I, bought those couple of things that maybe, made my life a little bit easier.
Hmm.
And whatever was left over, I'd sort of invest
Yeah.
most of that for the future.
Makes sense. Um, you've already mentioned the one book, Brendan Burchard's book. What's another book you could recommend to my audience?
Um, just trying to, yeah, there's the one I think that's called High Performance Plan. That's actually more of like a journal,
Yeah,
like a
he
journal
d-
type thing.
he right. He does have a book that goes along with it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have read that as well.
Okay.
Um,
That's
yeah, I've read quite a few books. To be honest, I've been mainly reading like business
mhm.
type books lately.
Anything come to
Um,
mind? I know I'm putting you on the
there's
spot.
one called Business for Life,
Okay.
which is actually written by a guy called Alderton,
Hmm.
which I'm guessing he's business person actually here in Australia. So
Okay.
your viewers may not have heard of him, but he actually, after being successful in quite a few businesses himself, he now runs like a business networking type
Hmm.
organization, which I'm involved in. And
Nice.
this book basically just goes through a lot of different really handy things around business.
Hmm.
Everything from like getting clear on your values and your mission and vision statement,
Hmm.
branding, marketing, pretty much, a lot of the main things that you need in business
Sure.
to succeed. So
Okay.
yeah, that's been something that's been really good.
No, that's good because I hadn't heard of him, so that's
No, it's called BX networking.
okay.
I think you guys actually have it over there as well.
Okay.
Because he's now gone, like his networking groups are in New Zealand, and they've only just opened up some different branches, I believe, in the States. I'm not sure
Got it.
exactly exactly what the locations are, but
Yeah.
yeah, so
Okay. Um, what's one question you wish I'd asked, but I haven't asked?
I think we've covered everything pretty well, to be honest. Um, the only other thing that just sprung to mind actually is when you were asking about what advice would I give to myself,
Hmm.
or that might help other people.
Right.
And there's one other thing that I've just sort of come back to, or that's just sprung to mind, and that is when we go through these major events and major life transitions, I guess you would say,
Hmm.
is to give yourself, the time and space to process everything.
Hmm.
Um, Quite often, because we're so stuck in the situation ourselves,
Hmm.
we can make decisions based on our emotions at that time.
Hmm.
And so I think that's really important as well, is just give yourself that time and that space to actually process and really think about before you take action on anything. Really think about what's in line with your own values, and what the outcomes may be. Um, yeah, so I think that's really useful as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that is good. And that, yeah, of course, that could be an hour or a day or a month or a year. Could look very differently depending on the situation. But yeah, I think we've all found ourselves in that situation where we just react based on emotions. And I mean, that's not to say emotions are bad, right? Um, but yeah, you do need to create the space and um, create space and time and to be able to make a smart decision, or not the make a reflective decision, not a reflexive decision, I guess, to bring it back. But anything to add there?
Yeah, we definitely just need to give that time and that space, I think.
Hmm.
Um, Definitely just to get really clear and be able to
Hmm.
reset and get clear on what your
All
end
right.
goals are as well.
So I got one more before we talk about where our listeners can reach out to you. What's Has anything been surprising? What's been one or two surprises with regard to your new profession? Whether that's about starting a business in general, or being a counselor? What's something that you didn't expect, that's turned out differently?
I think it's just myself. I've never been in business before,
Hmm.
and I think for me, it's been so much learning and so much growing
Hmm.
and so much like, pushing myself outside of my comfort zone,
Hmm.
um, to push things forward.
Yeah.
But I think it's just that realization that a business is made up of so many different elements.
Yes.
And you have to be good. You have to be good at all of these
Yeah.
elements for it to be successful. Especially these days with all the technology and social media and marketing and all those kinds of things.
Yep.
Um, you can be good at what you do, but if you're not good at finances and mindset and social media and all these other things,
Right.
you need to be confident and
Yeah.
capable at all of these things to be successful in business.
It
So for
is.
me,
It's.
it's just been a huge learning curve.
Hmm.
Um, and I feel like I've learnt so much already, but I've still got so much to learn. So yeah,
Yeah.
good.
No, that's great. I can relate to that. There's a lot to juggle, many hats to wear. Um, so, well, Marcus, I really do appreciate you coming on. I know it's early over there, and I appreciate you getting vulnerable for our listeners. And where can our listeners reach out to you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Jamie. So, your listeners can contact me at my website, which is www.readytoheal.net.au,
Okay,
or I have the Facebook business page, which is also which is Ready to Heal Counselling,
got it.
and there's actually a lot of um, different events and guest interviews and things like that I have on my business page as well. And I also have a private group
Okay,
for men as well,
nice.
um, which is called Next Level, which is actually called Next Level Brotherhood, which is within Facebook.
Okay,
Um, and yeah, I try and give as much of free value as I can with different hints and tips around anxiety and stress and some of those daily struggles that people might be experiencing.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, there's a lot of
And do you
free
you
value there.
do
So yeah, feel free to check that out.
perfect, and you do virtual counseling as well?
Yeah, and I do. So I do. I can do counselling via Zoom,
Hmm.
and yeah, as we spoke about before, I mainly specialise in helping men
Yeah,
through major life transitions.
sure.
So yeah, I have a complimentary complimentary chat that we can have, where we can have a chat about what your current situation and your current challenges might be. We can get some clarity around your goals and your purpose,
Yeah,
and what you'd like to gain from counselling, and then we can look at some different options moving forward.
gotcha. Well, this has been very good, Marcus. I Yesterday I saw somebody uh, advertising as she said she's a life coach, and I mean, I know I'm getting, this is the old man speaking here, but I mean, the picture, she looked like she was 18 years old, and um and that's not me slamming life coaches. I'm just saying I think it helps that unfortunately you've been through these big time challenges, but that adds to the credibility, your credibility, and you've been through these experiences, so you can speak firsthand, to you know to particularly men, with regard to what they may be facing. So, you strike me as a very real, honest, genuine person. And, I just, again, thank you for coming on, and I wish you the best with your business. And, yeah, thanks a lot for your time, Marcus. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for having me, Jamie.
Absolutely. And to our listeners out there, please give us a positive rating and review. And thank you for your time as well, which is your most valuable resource. Thanks, everyone.